Bring in show music, please.
Hi, I'm CNBC producer Katie Kramer. Today on Squawk Pod.
I don't believe in caps. I believe in free markets and capitalism. And I also believe in the independence of the Fed. And I don't care about the politics.
The strange bedfellows partnership that sounds like the beginning of a late-night comedy sketch.
Yes, I was surprised. In fact, I did not recognize the phone number.
Senator Elizabeth Warren may be working with President Trump to cap interest rates on credit cards. Stranger things.
He had not lifted a finger to try to get something through on credit card interest rate caps.
And how to be happier in 2026? Arthur Brooks says, put away your phone.
The news has always been tough. We want to know what's going on in the world. The problem is that there are no boundaries to it.
Plus, violence in Iran, Netflix's potential all-cash offer for Warner Brothers Discovery, and the rest of today's news that got us squawking.
Congress is going to have a heart attack.
It's Wednesday, January 14th, 2026. Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue, please.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick, along with Joe Kernan and Andrew Ross Sorkin.
I want to talk about the banks, actually, because remember, J.P. Morgan.
Financials had a rough day yesterday.
Yeah, and J.P. Morgan initially was up 5% or something. It closed down 4%. The 10% thing.
The caps on the credit cards.
That was
Big
probably
deal.
it. Inflation was pretty good numbers yesterday. I mean, it could have been a good day, but you know, I looked at how our poor, well, they're not poor, but you know, CNBC writes what happened yesterday, and I looked at them explaining what happened. They even mentioned Greenland because there's a big meeting today. They mentioned Iran. I mean, if you want to find things,
there's a lot to look at.
There's a lot to look at.
There's a lot to look for.
But just on pure earnings, J.P. Morgan was pretty good.
They did have a surprising decline in their investment banking. That was not a decline, but lower than had been anticipated.
On closer inspection?
Is that what? From some of those. And it did raise some questions about what you're going to see from Goldman Sachs.
You can do it all again today with banks and PPI. The death toll, nobody knows, but it's rising in Iran as the government cracks down on protesters. A U.S.-based rights group said it had verified at this point about 2,600 deaths, including about 2,400 protesters and 150 government-affiliated individuals. The protest began last month over soaring inflation, morphed into a broader challenge, obviously, to the mullahs in Iran's establishment there, the theocracy, or what thugocracy people are calling it. On Truth Social yesterday, President Trump told Iranians to keep protesting and said help is on its way. Asked later in the day what he meant by that. The president told reporters that they would have to figure it out, I guess just saying wait. Cover the Post today. They always can dig up something even, I don't know, more compelling for the cover of the Post, I guess. But according to an eyewitness that they have, if you want to get the body back from one of your loved ones, there as much as a $5,000 bullet fee is what the Post calls. It's right on the cover of the Post. So not only are protesters being shot, but families are being forced to pay bullet fees of roughly $5,000 to get the body of their loved ones back, according to an eyewitness in Tehran who writes for the Post.
Wow.
Totally bizarre.
Well, none of that, not one part of that is a good story at all. But then again, what do we do? I mean, when they said if they keep shooting, we're going to start shooting? Is that Congress going to have a heart attack?
In the meantime, President Trump responding to comments from J.P. Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon, who said anything that chips away at Fed independence is a bad idea. Here's the president speaking with reporters yesterday.
I think it's fine what I'm doing. We have a bad Fed person. He was extended by Biden. And, yeah, I think he's wrong. I think it's wrong. He's done a bad job. We should have lower rates. Jamie Dimon probably wants higher rates. Maybe he makes more money that way.
Dimon made his remarks after J.P. Morgan released fourth quarter earnings. He was commenting on the Justice Department's criminal investigation of Fed Chair Jay Powell related to a multi-billion-dollar Fed renovation project. And by the way, those comments were relatively tame. If you read what he said, he basically said, Anything that chips away is not at the central bank's independence is not a good idea. In my view, it will have the reverse consequences. It will raise inflation expectations and probably increase rates over time. But of course, anything Jamie Dimon says gets outsized attention by anybody who covers the banks, who covers Wall Street, who covers business in general. The Financial Times is reporting that Powell provided senators with details about that project last summer that could undermine the Trump administration's claims that Powell misled Congress. In the meantime, the Wall Street Journal says that the Fed received grand jury subpoenas one day after President Trump criticized U.S. attorneys at a White House event, telling them that they were weak and weren't moving fast enough against his perceived targets.
Meantime, President Trump also defending his proposal to cap credit card interest rates at 10% for a year. He's telling reporters that he wants to protect people from being charged high rates by, in his words, Jamie Dimon or anyone else. You can see how this sort of war of words can escalate, and we're going to be speaking.
I don't even know that Jamie's was a war of words.
No.
He speaks his mind on this stuff. I don't know what the reporter asked.
No, I know, but what happens invariably
Jamie Dimon thinks you're a jerk.
Jamie's asked to comment on it, so he does, which by the way, is the right thing to do.
Right.
I would argue.
Yeah.
And then invariably, a reporter who's also looking for a quote when they see President Trump says, Jamie says the opposite of what you're doing.
Yeah. Jamie
what do
thinks
you
you're wrong.
think? And then, of course, he does. You know, the president says it, but it says it in a much harsher and
right. He always hits back harder than
tone. It's a very unique moment where you have all of the different sides coming together, and I imagine also splintering apart.
You got to be conflicted on this. I'm totally conflicted on this.
Yeah, on the idea of capping,
I'm not at all.
Like
I'm not
capping.
at all.
Yeah, you don't think it's the right thing, right?
I'm not at all because I'm not at all because I have a spine. Because I don't believe in caps, and I believe in free markets and capitalism, and I also believe in the independence of the Fed, and I don't care about the politics. And I think that everybody should be able to do that.
You're perfectly intelligent, but I mean, to have Elizabeth Warren and President Trump talking on the phone, and she says we could get something passed legislatively if you were behind this and cap these things permanently. That is a surreal world that we are living in. Maybe you're not conflicted, but the reason I'm conflicted is because
what are you conflicted?
I'm conflicted that Trump. I'm conflicted.
It's crazy.
I'm conflicted that Trump and Elizabeth Warren are on the same side of something.
I bet they're on the same side of about 3 or 4 or 5 things.
Huh?
I bet they're on the same side of about 3 or 4 or 5 things.
And any of those things, I probably would. It's like not enemy of mine, but I disagree with most of the things that Senator Warren proposes, or that anyone on the far left proposes. Anything trending towards.
What's been so interesting about President Trump?
Right.
He has
There's more and more. Those things are.
But then tell me why.
There can only be so many.
Tell me why a classic conservative is not out publicly deriding this.
I think they are. I am. I don't think that's a good idea. I'll tell you a lot of things. Even if you're not a fan of Jay Powell because they waited too long to raise rates, and maybe that had something to do with inflation. This is like the last thing that the Trump administration really wants as we go towards the midterms is something that doesn't just highlight the GDP numbers and the inflation numbers coming down. It's a total distraction from being able to sell or at least promote the good things that are happening.
Because it brings everybody out to defend Jay Powell and the Fed as the institution.
A lot of people that are on the side of the president, you can read that's what they said. It's like, you don't need this right now. This. I think that's what Scott Bessent was saying. You got all these good things to talk about, and because of what's happening with. But Trump still says he didn't know. And
well, he doubled down, though, yesterday. He said that jerk at one point, referring to Jay Powell, and comments that he made yesterday in front of reporters. So he's not.
And then there are real dead enders that are saying, look, no one's above the law, and it's way over. And Luna is right, the congresswoman that referred the stuff to the Justice Department. Supposedly that's where it came from. That's what Bill Pulte said. It wasn't me, it was her. And President Trump says it wasn't me, it was her. That got the.
But these are all his people.
Yeah,
we're doing this.
And Pam Bondi, and that was what was great about that journal piece yesterday. That people are scrambling to try and get to curry favor and doing things that they think he wants.
Toadies, I think, is what
they did. Call them toadies. A toady is something you don't want to be called. I think I've been called a toady before. Netflix is reportedly considering an all-cash bid for the streaming and studio assets of Warner Brothers Discovery. Reports say a cash offer could be a faster way to close the deal. Warner Brothers Discovery is facing a competing bid from Paramount Skydance and its CEO David Ellison. He wants to buy all of Warner Brothers, including the company's cable TV channels. Paramount sued Warner Brothers on Monday for information about its deal with Netflix and said it plans to nominate directors to Warner's board. And something that you rarely see. I was like, it's in the Journal. Did you guys see this? The big story. The big story on Netflix is on B1. That's the big story. So I got to the bottom of it, and I'm like, where's it? That's it.
Short on details?
3 paragraphs. But
you know what?
It
came in late.
It happens late, and you just smack it in
you're
there.
old school. You're still reading the
it.
print edition. There's a longer version online.
Online
On the computer.
Yeah, that just means it happens so
It's
late.
on your
that they
phone.
cut
I pay a
something out.
subscription, but now I'm not sure of what my password. It's hard. And anyway, Netflix.
It doesn't make any sense for them to do anything right now.
If Netflix is $72 billion, and if you value Paramount at $77.9 billion, you really got to question. You got to use what the Warner Brothers strategy is and question whether it's really whether that's money good
Well,
at
didn't you say it's the collar that's
77.9.
making
But if they went
cash?
to 72 cash, that would definitely be money good at 70 because the collar on the stock.
But if you're Netflix right now,
you don't.
What's the incentive to do anything? There's
Right.
no incentive to be bidding against yourself. You should just leave it. Stay where you are until you actually see how this plays out. You don't want to. You think Netflix is going to make a move before Paramount makes a move?
It looks like they will in terms of all cash, don't you think?
I don't know. You got. I would think.
And David
I think
Ellison-
you'd wait for the Ellisons first. before you do anything.
And that could be any day with them too, don't you think?
If you believe they're going to come, and then the question is, well, how are they going to guarantee it? Because,
Right.
and I think there's going to be an issue again.
Right. They'll still, no matter what Larry Ellison says, you'll still say we don't believe you, probably.
Not necessarily.
But
if he
how many
guarantees the
different
whole thing,
how many
like
different
lock,
things
stock,
are cobbled
of the
together
debt.
to get to that
The
money?
debt payment
How many
is a
banks are
the
involved?
debt payments are a big deal.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to make it work unless the
$1.5,
Ellison family
$1.4
genuinely
billion?
says this is all on us and
Right.
and it's all locked up.
Right.
In the meantime, you're going to hear a lot of back and forth.
Cheese will be next.
Coming up on Squawk Pod, Senator Elizabeth Warren, noted progressive and ranking member of the powerful Senate Banking Committee, on the potential to put a cap on credit card interest rates.
Is there anybody defending 36% interest rate on credit cards or 28% interest on credit cards?
And her unlikely ally in the fight.
You know, it really was one of those moments. I don't usually pick up the phone when I don't recognize the number.
You're listening to Squawk Pod. Here's Becky Quick.
All right, welcome back, everybody. President Trump reached out to Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren for a conversation that the White House called productive. Joining us right now with the details of how that conversation came about and maybe some areas where they can work together is Senator Elizabeth Warren. She is the lead Democrat on the Banking Committee. And Senator, thank you for being with us. It almost sounds like a Saturday Night Live skit that the two of you actually spoke and had something that the White House called productive. First of all, how did this conversation come about? It was after a speech that you had given that was actually pretty fiery.
That's right. I had just given a speech about the future of the Democratic Party. And the basic point that I made in the speech is that Donald Trump had promised for an entire year in the run-up to the 2024 election that on day one he would lower costs for American families. He gets elected. And the very first interview, he says on day one that he will lower costs for American families and that's why he got elected. And yet here we are a year in, and the cost of groceries is up, the cost of utilities is up, the cost of housing is up, the cost of healthcare is up. And all of those costs are up because of policies that Donald Trump and the Republicans in Congress have pushed on our economy. So the argument I was making in the speech is it's time for Democrats to jump in to hold Donald Trump and the Republicans accountable for these higher costs for American families, and then make a choice as we go forward. We can take our economic agenda and sand it down, narrow it down to make it more acceptable to billionaire donors, or we can actually go full-throated on behalf of the American people and make bold proposals and demonstrate that we will get in there and fight for them. But this was all about lowering costs for American families, because that's what Democrats are going to do, and that's what the election of 2026 is going to be about.
So shortly afterwards, you get a call from the president.
Yeah.
Were you surprised? What happened?
Yes, I was surprised. In fact, I did not recognize the phone number. So the question then is, he raises the point about a cap on credit card interest rates, something that had come up in the speech and that I've been working on for years, and that is trying to get interest rates down. And he said he wanted to work on that. And I said, great, let's get something done, because my point was, and I had made this point in the speech, he had not lifted a finger to try to get something through on credit card interest rate caps. And then while I had him, I said, there's something else you could do just right away. We need to bring down the cost of housing. And the way we do that is to increase housing supply all across this country. We're 3 million units of housing short. And we need urban housing, rural housing, housing for first-time home buyers, housing for renters, housing for seniors, housing for people with disabilities. So I had worked with Chairman Tim Scott, the Republican chair of the Banking Committee. We put together a bill that had 40 proposals in it, every one of them aimed toward increasing supply, making it easier to get approvals, more on manufactured housing. Passed the Senate unanimously, and yet goes over to the House, and the House Republicans won't move it at all. Gets tangled up over there. And I said, Mr. President, you want to help bring down the cost of housing? Light a fire under your House Republicans, get them to move this bill. Let's get it signed into law, and let's get started now on a first step on lowering housing costs. So
Senator,
we had a lot to talk about.
I want to go back to credit cards just
Sure.
for a moment, because there is a study by a professor at the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School suggesting that a 10% cap could make up to 80% of customers of credit cards in America unprofitable at the current lending rates and credit limits, which suggests that there would be a meaningful reduction in the amount of credit potentially made available to customers if something like this were to go into effect. What do you make of that?
Well, first, obviously, I want to take a look at their data, but I also just want to start with the big picture here. Is there anybody defending 36% interest rate on credit cards or 28% interest on credit cards? Anybody out there who isn't paid by the industry that's putting out those credit cards? And do keep in mind right now, there are a lot of community banks, there are a lot of credit unions that are putting out credit cards at much, much lower interest rates. But what do the credit card company giants say? They say, oh no, you can't touch credit card interest rates. No matter what, it will be the end of the world. We will shut down credit cards. They go on and on and on. And basically, it's the same song they sang over what would happen if the CFPB put some caps on overdraft fees. What would happen if the CFPB put caps on fees on credit cards? The credit card companies literally make billions of dollars. Last year, they made $150 billion in profits off the credit cards that American families are holding. So we have some choices to make. Do the investors and the corporate executives keep that $150 billion, or does some chunk of that go back to hardworking families who are just trying to pay their mortgage, just trying to pay for groceries every month?
Senator, cumulatively, prices rose 22% in the Biden administration. So much, in fact, that real average wages were lower when Biden left the office than when he came in. Inflation was today 2.7%. It's still too high, obviously. But how are you blaming Trump's policies on the affordability crisis when you're talking about 2.7% versus 22%.
Well, let's talk about what's happened. And that is that Trump's tariffs have driven up prices. Trump's chaos from the tariffs and other changes have driven up prices. Trump's energy policies have driven up prices. Price of utilities, take a look around. And Trump's decisions, along with the Republican Party, to cut access to health care has driven up the cost of health care for some families double and even triple. So we're talking about Trump policies that have driven up costs for American families. You know, just pick one little piece out of that. Have you observed what's happening to home mortgage foreclosures? Do you know that since Donald Trump was sworn in, home mortgage foreclosures have gone up 21%? So, yeah, there have been a lot of policies that Donald Trump and the Republicans have been following for a year now, and it is showing up in the costs that people pay.
I was trying to do the composite of putting everything together instead of picking individual things, and that's 2.7% versus a high of 9% during the Biden administration.
Look,
oil's down at least. Most prices don't drop, Senator. You know, the Fed looks for a 2% inflation rate. That's the target. So prices continue to rise every single year because we don't want deflation. So 2.7, while not great, is nothing close to what we had under the Democratic administration.
You know, Joe, what you should do? You should go lecture to every American family around the country who is saying they feel under enormous economic stress. 80% of Americans say, I'm worrying about whether or not I can make it to the end of the month on my paycheck. I'm worried about whether or not I can send my kids to school. I'm worried about whether or not I will ever have a chance to retire. American families are mashed to the wall on prices. They are not able to take their paychecks and stretch them far enough and build some real economic security. And part of that is because Donald Trump, in the 1 year that he has been in office, after promising how many times during the election? At least hundreds of times, promising to lower costs on day one. The costs that families have to deal with up close and personal every day, those costs, groceries, utilities, housing, healthcare, those costs are up, and it's putting a squeeze on American families. You can go tell them it's not, but I don't think they're going to believe you.
I'm trying to read the room here. Do you get the sense that you and President Trump will actually be working on things together, or do you think that this was just talk and that no action will come of it?
I don't know. You'd have to ask Donald Trump. I'm ready to go. I've got the legislation ready to go. We've got the housing bill that we've already gotten all the way through the Senate. I've worked with every Republican to get that done. My job is to do anything I can to lower costs for American families. And the Democratic Party is ready to go. We stand behind that. The question is, right now, all the Republicans have done is raise costs for American families. Donald Trump says, no, he wants to be in the business of lowering those costs. My answer is, talk is cheap. But if he's really ready to put up and get something done, then let's do it.
You said you didn't recognize the phone number when it came in. Did you save the number into your contacts?
You know, it really was one of those moments. I don't usually pick up the phone when I don't recognize the number. And I thought, I just come out of giving this speech. And I thought, 202, it's somewhere in Washington.
You can put a special ringtone on there, Senator. I've seen it on Landman. When his wife calls on Landman, it's just really scary. Yeah. I think you can shop.
It's a great touch.
Yeah.
Senator Warren, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Coming up on Squawk Pod, be happier with less technology and less envy.
It just seems kind of obvious, and maybe I don't need Arthur Brooks to tell me that.
You need Arthur Brooks.
Okay, I do need you to tell me that.
Happiness guru Arthur Brooks' New Year's resolutions are next. Welcome back. This is Squawk Pod.
Up and Andrew, Q.
You're watching Squawk Box right here on CNBC. I'm Andrew Ross Sorkin along with Joe Kernan and Becky Quick this morning. We got a lot going on.
Arthur's here to weigh in on a busy start for 2026. Let's bring in Harvard professor Arthur Brooks. He's so much more than that. I didn't mean to start out disparaging you. His new column for the Free Press is titled "The Problem with Your New Year Resolution." And Arthur is, thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Love to see you. Uphill
battle. You've been swimming upstream ever since I don't know why someone would decide to try to help people with happiness in the current world. And what I mean by that is, I think of 100 years ago, and I wonder if you went out in the fields for 10 hours after getting up early and put in a day where the dignity of work and physical labor and the endorphins go. You come home and it's warm and there's some hot food on the stove and you get a good night's sleep. Is that possible anymore in the modern world? Because we don't have any problem. We're not worried about, most of us hopefully aren't worried about staying warm. We're not worried about sustenance and things like that, and yet we're miserable.
Yeah, well, you bring up a really good point, which is that the great-granddad Kernan didn't come home and say to his wife, "Honey, I had a panic attack behind the mule today." That's the reason was because effectively his brain was working the way it was supposed to work. And we actually have to take a lesson from people in the past. Now, I don't want to go back in time, but the truth of the matter is that we need to live in all sorts of ways where we're concentrating on our work and love. And that's one of the reasons that you find that the habits of the happiest people are their faith or philosophical life, their family life, their friendships, their deep friendships. I mean, real friends, not deal friends, and certainly not virtual friends. And then the work that you're needed for. And so that's the things that we need to be focusing on today.
Been one of your themes throughout, I think, all of your books.
Absolutely,
is the dignity of work. I was going to say it just seems kind of obvious, and maybe I don't need Arthur Brooks to tell me that.
You need Arthur Brooks.
Okay, I do need you to tell me that.
That's right. You're reading my column in the Free Press on this, right?
New column in the Free Press, folks.
But if all I did was read newspapers, or even as Andrew does, read the newspapers online, like this newfangled thing that people do.
That's newfangled?
No, kidding. But if I were to do,
like it's newfangled to him.
If I were to do it that way, you would be bogged down in Iran and Ukraine and so many things. You have to fall back on what you have personally with your family. You have to compartmentalize it and be happy with your family and whatever it is that you're doing for self-fulfillment. And so I think that's obvious.
Yeah, that's obvious, except it's lost to a lot of people. And
I know it is.
It's just one of the points that this column I'm writing about in the Free Press twice a week actually is to deal with these everyday issues in people's lives. And one of the things that you bring up, which is really important, is not that the bad news is going to ruin our lives. That's not the case. News has always been tough. We want to know what's going on in the world. The problem is that there are no boundaries to it. So people will say, the economy is stressing me out, the environment is stressing me out. No, what's stressing you out is the way that you're getting that information, which is to say all day long in the little device in your pocket. It's kind of like the bubonic plague. People thought it was bad air. It was rats. Well, now we've got rats that we pull out of our pockets and pet all day long. And they're making us sick a lot of the time. And so we actually have to wall that off. We need barriers around actually how much information we get from the outside.
I don't know what comes first sometimes. I see people that their entire life is devoted to angst about the current situation in the country. They travel from city to city expressing themselves. Now, was there a hole in their being to start with, and this sort of cause fulfills what's missing? Because if that's what it is, something was missing before.
Yeah, of course.
A lot of times I'm not going to blame it on all young people, but it just seems like there's a lost generation, which is...
Yeah, well, when you look at activism in general, and I got nothing against activism per se, but when it takes over your life, whether it's left-wing activism or right-wing activism, that's something that you're screaming out for. You're looking for the meaning of your life. Right. And the meaning of your life would come from more traditional means, and when we're in a secularizing society and families are fragmenting and friends are online, well, guess what? We don't find it. And so the result of it is that
put all your friends online.
People look for it online, and people do that constantly. This is one of the things that I write about a lot, is that people have fake religions. This is what has done so much harm in business, has done so much harm in government, certainly at universities, is people with their fake religions of activism have wound up substituting anger for love.
Although that's not a new thing. Activism on college campuses.
No, it's not. What happens is that when it gets too
generation.
high and it kind of turns over the apple cart. So inquiry is the business of universities and higher education in general. But when advocacy takes over for inquiry, then you get the balance is all wrong. And then what happens is that you're not teaching students.
I understand not wanting advocacy coming from the teaching population, but advocacy from students. You look back at
that's always happened
60s
for sure.
protests, sure.
But that has been so radically emphasized.
Because they had something to really protest about.
But really what it is, once again, is that that's a sign that people are seeking something deeper. That's a cry for help. Most of the things that we complain about, for example, conspiracy theories, that's a cry for what we call coherence in behavioral science, which is, I don't understand how the world works. Why do things happen the way that they do? And if you don't have religion, if you don't understand science, then you're going to go down the rabbit hole of something you're finding on the internet.
Like the Earth is flat and we never landed on the moon?
Yeah, exactly. Or anything crazy about the people that you hate in politics. Yeah. Those conspiracy theories are a cry for help about meaning, is the way that works. And if we started to treat each other with a little bit of grace, a little bit of love, a little bit of understanding, we could actually bring something better to these people. That's what I think our objective should be.
This is not new, Arthur, and I know that does everyone know about Maslow's hierarchy?
Not everybody, but I'm doing my best to bring it to everybody.
Well, so it's like this, and at the bottom you've got shelter and sustenance.
Right.
And you slowly go up to things that we need. At the very top is self-actualization.
Right. That's a sense of meaning. So basically,
still,
at the very top.
This still holds. How long ago was that?
1942. So 1942.
So 80 years. We haven't learned anything. So you should just focus on the very top of that. And
no, you need to.
How do you self-actualize?
What does that mean? Here's the point. Happiness is love. Meaning is love. The more that you're paying attention to the love relationships in your life, focusing on that, putting your energy into the love relationships in your life, the more you're going to find meaning, the more you're going to find happiness.
What if it's just yourself that you love? Then it might be a problem.
Well, then you got a bigger problem. The truth is you don't understand how to love yourself until you have other people in your life.
You do need to love yourself, but maybe not spend your entire life doing that.
Well, that's probably looking in the mirror is not the best
to the
place
exclusion of everything. To the exclusion of everything else.
There's also less envy, right?
There's a lot. Yeah, envy's funny because envy is actually a natural human. It's a phenomenon based on the fact that we're kin-based species, and we want to know where we are in the hierarchy, and so we compare ourselves to others chronically. The problem is that if we're not grateful for what we have, if we're not actually able to compliment other people for the good things that they do. So, the solution to envy in our own lives is admiration.
I was thinking about how every generation thinks that the upcoming generation is not going to be equipped to take over the world. And I lived through it in the 60s and 70s. I wanted to be like Dennis Hopper from Easy Rider back then. And people would look at me and think, look at you. Now I'm doing it. I feel myself falling into that same trap with people with hair that the color of it doesn't exist in nature.
Or hair.
Blue hair. The people that I see it just raging on Twitter ignorantly about a lot of things. They're the future generation. Did social media make it worse? Can we save this entire generation?
So social media brought out the worst in everybody, and part of the reason is it gave people who didn't really know anything a platform, whether they're old or they're young, and then you nutpick that because the most outrageous things are the things that become salient.
So the algorithm shows that. We think everybody's like that.
Yeah. The truth is that that's not how everybody's. This is not what we see.
I have a separate theory of the case that goes to your envy piece.
Okay, good.
I'm curious where you land on this. So I have a view that social media has created an even greater sense of inequality in the world.
Yeah.
Because depending on where you live in the economic strata, you're now exposed to, it used to be you'd watch Robin Leach, or what was his name?
Lifestyles of the
Rich and Famous. And you'd see a show and maybe you'd see what some kind of big house looks like or whatever. Now you're inundated on the scroll by this whole other world that I think a lot of people both envy, and because they think that they have no access to it.
But a lot of it's fake.
Well, part of it may very well be fake, but they also look at it and think I think it harms their own view of themselves, their own dignity. They then have lots of negative feelings about the people that do. I mean, here we are in this sort of class
There's sort of
world.
this admiration that people have toward people who have more than they do, but there's an envy you want to tear it down as well.
Correct.
Because you feel like you can't.
Correct, and I think that this more than anything actually exacerbates it, and then not only exacerbates it, then gives voice to everybody on all sides, and then creates this sort of even greater schism.
Yeah, no, that's right. And that the human brain can't accommodate itself to comparison across large groups of people. Homo sapiens, their brains are accommodated to live in the Pleistocene about 250,000 years ago, where all humanity lived in bands of 30 to 50 individuals, kin-based, hierarchical, and you compared yourself to, 20, 30, 40 other people. That's what it came down to. You can't conceive of, your brain doesn't work right when you're comparing yourself to millions of other people way, way out of your stratum. And that creates tons of unhappiness. Envy is the only one of the deadly sins that's not even fun. And that's a problem, isn't it? And that's
what do you do about that? Elizabeth Warren often talks about
I can come up with a couple of them.
Inequality,
sloth is fun.
But here's the issue. It is this question about inequality. Also, as we talk about what people think is affordable, what they think they should be able to get or shouldn't be able to get. In this day and age, I think a lot of people believe that they should be able to, have dinner every single night from Uber Eats.
Right.
That is not something that, because so many others do. I mean, it changes the level at which people think that things are happening.
Right. No, that's exactly right. And, again, when you compare yourself to somebody who has way more than you really can't conceive of your life about more than 1.5 levels above where you were born. So if you're lower middle class, this kind of upper middle class is what you can really conceive of. And there's a lot of theory about it. There's a lot of research on this. And so when people are being exposed to super, super, super rich, you get this weird kind of envious social comparison that's going on. And when you think about it, fame is the only one of the world's idols that you can't ever be happy except in spite of. I don't have to tell you that. I mean, you've got this book that's been for 1 million weeks on the bestseller list, and you're on TV all the time. You walk down the street. I've been with you in public. Andrew! I mean, it's weird. I mean, you can't have a normal life under the circumstances. Now imagine that you're actually of this world fame because you're so unbelievably rich and everybody wants something from you.
Right.
Your brain tells you that
I don't have the money,
great.
so nobody wants anything from me.
Everybody wants everything that you've got. No, you're right. You're exactly right. And this is a problem that we have, and we have to deal with it. And the only way we deal with it is with love and with our relationships and focusing on the things that really matter to everybody all the time. Your faith, your family, your friends, and your work that serves other people.
The great Arthur Brooks, thank you for coming in.
Thanks.
New column in the Free Press. Check it out.
And that is Squawk Pod for today. Thanks for listening. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernan, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Tune in weekday mornings on CNBC at 6 Eastern, or follow Squawk Pod wherever you get your podcasts. And would you do something for us? Take a second to rate or write a brief review about Squawk Pod on Apple Podcasts. That helps other listeners find us. Have a great day. We'll meet you right back here tomorrow.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.